Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the race reaction to the 2019, wherever we are, Spanish Grand Prix. Positive start to the stream. Well done, Sean. How did you find that, chat? I'm going to be joined by Dan in a minute to kind of dissect what was interesting. It happened, didn't it, that Grand Prix? I've seen a few people in chat already saying it was a good race. People entitled their opinion. I get quite defensive of Formula One and I refuse to use the term boring, and I don't think it was boring. I think we did get some intrigue in there with strategy. We got a lot of action compared to the rest of the race for the last 15 laps, so there was some good stuff in there, but overall I was very disappointed. But to be honest, kind of what I expected from Spain, so can I be disappointed with getting a race I expected? Probably not. I'm still going to moan though. You know what I'm like. We'll kick off with the results. Obviously, spoilers in this stream. I don't know why I said that because it's a race reaction stream. It's blatantly obvious, Sean. But Lewis Hamilton won the race, 4 seconds clear of Valtteri Bottas. Yes, a 5th consecutive Mercedes 1-2. Massive congratulations to them. That is a huge achievement, regardless of what you think of Mercedes and their domination. That is absolutely incredible. So well done to them. Max Verstappen, fantastic in 3rd place. Won the official driver of the day. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, I'm sure. Sebastian Vettel in 4th for Ferrari, Leclerc in 5th. No pace, I think is the best way to put it. Ferrari just could not compete today with those ahead, really. 6th place for Pierre Gasly, so rounding out that top 6. So doing what he needs to for Red Bull. Seems to be finding some form now. Kevin Magnussen in 7th for Haas, with Carlos Sainz 8th and Daniel Kvyat, who gave us some action, in 9th place. Romain Grosjean rounded out those final points pair positions just ahead of Alexander Albon. Great squabble between them two towards the end of the race. Daniel Ricciardo 12th, Nico Hülkenberg 13th, Kimi Raikkonen 14th, Sergio Perez in 15th. 16th was Antonio Giovinazzi, 17th George Russell, 18th Robert Kubica, and then it was Stroll and Norris, your only two retirements. Right, let's bring him straight in. Good afternoon, Dan. Welcome back, mate. What did you make of that?
You know what? I think I'm going to have to agree with the chat. I quite enjoyed that one. I'm not going to lie. I really like the different strategy elements that were at play throughout the entire race. And I mean, I think a lot of, if people know me, those final 15 laps, I was dying. I was absolutely screaming at the TV. My BPM is still a little bit too high, but thanks for having me, mate. I'm looking forward to this one.
No worries, mate. Thank you for coming along. I disagree. It wasn't, don't get me wrong. Please don't ever get me wrong. It was not boring. It was not the worst race we've ever seen. It probably wasn't even the worst race we've seen around Spain, but it wasn't... It wasn't all that good. I think there's maybe a bit of Grosjean bias in there, Dan. I think and maybe some recency bias, as Ben was putting it on Friday. People remembering the last 15 laps rather than what happened prior to that. Because I mean, the strategy intrigue was there, wasn't it? It really was, and I liked the question marks over, why is Leclerc gone to the hards? Oh, Verstappen's gone on the softs, that's a surprise. So from that point of view, really good stuff. But to bring it back to what Liberty always talk about, new fans in the sport, somebody turning over isn't going to go, ooh, some strategy intrigue, I think I'll start watching. That's the thing. We want racing, and we got racing towards the end of the race, to be fair.
Yeah, it was just, like you say, just lacking up to that safety car. It really did need that safety car. I'll agree with you there, because before that, it was very much a procession, which, like you say, we sort of expect around Spain, but I don't really remember any sort of squabbles at all, really, before that safety car. Two DRS sections on this circuit, and yet overtaking is so difficult. So, yeah, maybe a bit of recency bias potentially is in there, but I know personally strategy is something I love in Formula One, so I think you're right. For a new fan, I imagine they've thought it was a little bit stale, especially early on.
Yeah, I think I agree. We're sad. We're sad. We like strategy and things like that. We've been watching for many years, too many years, some might argue. But yeah, I think there were good elements in there. But we've got to start. I know people are not going to be happy. Oh, it's another 1-2 for Mercedes, season over. They're ruining the sport and all of that. BS, I nearly swore. All of that nonsense, but huge credit to them. 5 consecutive 1-2 finishes. That's incredible. Somebody in chat, I think earlier, put a couple of stats in about the last time we saw 5 1-2 finishes in a row at any point during the season. But from Australia, from the first race of the season, to go 1-2 at the opening 5 races, I mean, that's incredible. Are Mercedes that good, Dan, or is it others that are making them look better than perhaps they are? Not trying to take anything away from them, of course, but is it all this in-squabbling at Ferrari over team orders and not being able to get their car right that's giving Mercedes this advantage?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. I think it's obviously a race-by-race case, because I think we all know Ferrari should have won in Bahrain. However, that being said, you look at China. You look at this race where, okay, Ferrari weren't on the pace, but it doesn't help the infighting and squabbling there. So I think I saw a statistic today on Twitter that Ferrari's pace relative to winter testing is very similar, but Mercedes, in a very short space of time, have found almost a second, I think it was roughly, relative to their pace in winter testing at this circuit. So I think it doesn't help the fighting with Ferrari and Verstappen being consistent and being there to pick up the pieces when Ferrari aren't there. But I think Mercedes really have done a mega job this season. And I think it's more them just bossing it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to take anything away from them, and I think obviously it plays a part what's going on at Ferrari. I do, and I don't think they were expecting Red Bull to hit the ground running quite as well as they have with Honda, and that's caught them out. I did not expect though Ferrari to be looking over their shoulders in this first half of the season, but I think Mercedes have got the car right. They're right internally. I think the pace was there in winter testing. We were just led down the garden path as we tend to be, or up the garden path as we tend to be from them. I think. Somebody just put it in chat, I think, as well. Operationally, they are spot on. They get everything right. They've got the best management. They've probably got the best driver. They have got the best driver on the grid. Valtteri Bottas this year, or Valtteri Bottas, whatever you want to call him. He seems to be a completely different guy. So, yeah, it's all about the beard. I think they've been exceptional. And 5 straight 1-2s is incredible. People won't like it. People will say it's rubbish and that they're ruining the sport, but I said it in the watch-along stand. It's not up to Mercedes to slow down to let Ferrari and Red Bull catch up. It's up to Red Bull and Ferrari to close that gap. So if people want to bitch about the sport being ruined by a team, maybe look at those that aren't doing the job to keep up with Mercedes. That's a very controversial line. It's going to get me a lot of crap in the comments.
I don't disagree with you, to be honest with you. I mean, as I just said, Ferrari just, ever since winter testing, haven't really gone anywhere. And if anything, if they were ahead, we can't ever judge. And we said this all through the winter, you can't rely on winter testing. But even if they were ahead, they've not been able to stay ahead or in the development race. In Bahrain, comfortably the best team. Since then, nowhere. And going into Monaco, which you would have expected to be a circuit which would favour their car, all of a sudden, Mercedes seemed to be the better team with chassis and through the low speed corners. And so it's so bizarre. And considering the upward trajectory Ferrari have been on for the last couple of seasons, you'd have thought that's only going to continue. So I question, like we say, taking nothing away from Mercedes, but Binotto has not hit the ground running. And I question whether Aruva Bene would have had that killer instinct, which might have hurt Charles Leclerc. But at the moment, it's a domination period by Mercedes, which again, I don't like to use that, but 5 1-2s in a row, not even a second place for Ferrari. For them, they'll be seeing this as not good enough. And I'm struggling over the next few races to see where they're going to be able to pick up a victory.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll stick with Ferrari then. But I mean, Monaco, you'd say Red Bull probably will be the team to beat there. Canada, as we've seen over recent years, Ferrari have gone well there, but Mercedes have gone well there as well. And last year, Max Verstappen was pretty solid as well. France, yeah, I can't call it Mercedes track because it's only the second race back there. Austria, Mercedes would have probably won that without the retirements. Then you're coming up to Silverstone. Lewis Hamilton loves the British Grand Prix, obviously. Germany, bad memories for Vettel. I agree, I cannot see a point. And I'm sorry to depress people in chat or anybody listening to this. But at the moment, I can't see a point in the season where Ferrari are going to be able to stop Mercedes. And I know somebody said in chat a moment ago saying that after 5 races, say the championship is over is pretty daft. But maybe not Drivers' Championship because you could potentially be seeing Hamilton versus Bottas, although that's something that people think won't happen because Hamilton gets so good in the second half of the year. But Constructors' Championship, nearly 100 points clear after 5 races. I said it in the watch-along, Mercedes are going to have to implode for that to fall away. I cannot see anybody stopping them in a Constructors. And our only hope as neutrals, Dan, is that Bottas can take it to Hamilton. But if Hamilton takes a 6th title, best driver on the grid, again, probably get me some stick for that one, but he is. You can't take anything away from him or Mercedes. So I'm not gonna sit here and, like I say, and say too much about what Ferrari are doing to cock it up. But Mercedes are delivering where they need to. Ferrari, I can't see them turning it around. But one team that really surprised me this weekend, and probably more a driver, was Max Verstappen on the podium, 2nd season in a row in Spain. A track where Red Bull should be okay at, but aren't traditionally amazing at. He did win in 2016, but fantastic drive from him. And he's just... This first 5 races is his maturity, the way he's driving the car, he seems calmer, he seems more in control, and he just feels like the Max Verstappen we've been desperate to see over the last season or so.
Yeah, he's doing an awesome job. And over the winter, we discussed whether he was ready to lead a team. Ever since Melbourne, I've not heard a peep of that whatsoever. He looks so in control of that team. I think it helps that Gasly's been off the pace a little bit, but don't get me wrong, this guy has been outperforming that car. A car which, again in the winter, we said, you know what, if they take third, Red Bull will be happy with that, in the constructors that is. But already Verstappen's, I think he's back up to third now in the drivers after this race. I'm not 100% sure on that.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, so the fact that he's even in that mix is crazy. And he's just continuing that form from the end of last season. He was only a couple of points off third at the end of last year, which you'd have thought is just unthinkable considering the start he had. So the fact that he's doing a mega job already, it's great for him. And like you say, this is the kind of performances that we just thought of over the last couple of years, thought, Max, just take out those silly little mistakes you're making. And he's done that this year. So, like you just said, Monaco, you go into that race thinking, yeah, Max is probably more likely to win a race at this point than Ferrari.
Yeah, I nothing against Ferrari, nothing against anybody, no favouritism, but I'd love to see Red Bull win in Monaco. Not just to break up this run from Mercedes, to give people a little bit of faith maybe, but I'd just love to see Honda get that win in Monaco. And Max Verstappen, a bit of redemption for last year, I guess, after his crash in FP3, although that was his fault, so I don't know if he can get redemption for that, but you know what I mean. But looking back at the race, Dan, it was a quiet one. I know we had the strategy intrigue that we keep talking about, and I want to talk about Ferrari strategy again. Seems like we're doing that every weekend. Talk about Ferrari strategy again in a minute. But it wasn't until that safety car came out that the race really came alive in terms of close racing. The incident between Stroll and Norris, how did you see that? Because I was trying to call that live, and I called it a racing incident. I think that's probably a fair assessment. But when you actually, could be, mainly because when you look at it, Norris probably expected and had the right to a bit more space, and Stroll probably expected Norris to back out of it. So I called it a racing incident, but I don't know if you disagree. Perhaps put the blame at somebody's door.
No, I do agree with you. And I think Norris was beating himself up so much, even on the team radio, trying to make out like almost it was his fault. But like I do agree with you. When I was watching it, I was thinking, I think the nature of the corner, the racing line, we saw it multiple times in this race. When someone's trying to go around the outside, because, like I say, the nature of the corner, it almost cuts the driver off who's going on the outside. So that was Norris in this instance. So I think you're right. Norris would argue he's entitled to space. Stroll would argue he was on the racing line. So, yeah, I don't put the blame at anyone's door.
Do you think, playing devil's advocate, do you think Norris, 12 months on, this time next year, if he's in that position, would have backed off? Maybe a little bit of inexperience there from him? Maybe looking at it in, you put... I realise the idea of putting a Lewis Hamilton or a Sebastian Vettel behind Lance Stroll is crazy because of the way they dominate, but let's assume they're in that position. A Vettel or a Hamilton probably looks at that and goes, I'll leave it for a lap, or I'll leave it for a few corners. Maybe Norris could have backed off, but should he have to? It's racing, isn't it?
Yeah, and if I'm being fully honest, I mean, the cameras were fully focused on the front, so I don't know how many laps Norris was stuck behind Stroll, but potentially, yeah, it's a strange one. I think both of them relatively inexperienced, aren't they? So I think potentially he would have backed out with a little bit more experience, but then he's trying to prove himself in F1 in a field that's getting more and more competitive, so it's better than what Van Dorn did a couple of years ago to Massa in his first Spanish Grand Prix at that exact place. So it's, inexperienced, but no, I do think it was a racing incident.
Just ignoring chat for a minute, because Jack Chambers has used the quote that gets me triggered, and I'm sure he knows it gets me triggered. So I'm going to ignore that, and I'm not even going to say it. I'm going to annoy people by not even saying it. You can read the chat if you want to see it, but it does trigger me. But yeah, it kind of set the race up quite nicely. I was saying in the watch along, can Verstappen get past Bottas? More out of hope than expectation. Can Vettel get Verstappen? What interested me about that restart and after that safety car was I fully expected, with the aggressive setup that Vettel was talking about, or the adventurous one, whatever he uses a word, on the setup on that Ferrari, I thought he would get behind Verstappen and breeze past him in a straight line. Verstappen bogged off. He was gone, Dan. He wasn't hanging about. He disappeared, and he never looked... even though he was on, the two-stopper, which obviously everybody ended up on pretty much apart from Hülkenberg because of the safety car, but he was on that two-stopper from right on early in the race. Ferrari just didn't... He just seemed to have them under control, seemed to have them in his pocket, and that was the surprise for me at the restart. Obviously, we'll get to the midfield stuff in a minute, but that was the surprise for me at the restart, was just how easily Verstappen was able to build, not a huge gap, what was it in the end? 1.4 seconds, but he managed to break the DRS in good time and controlled that gap, and that was it. I honestly thought Vettel would be right on him, but no.
Yeah, I was the same, but what was also strange was that Verstappen was able to keep with Bottas for so long as well. Hamilton just went off into the distance on those soft tyres, which I think we all expected, but Verstappen, like you say, you would have expected Vettel, maybe Leclerc to potentially get on the back of Verstappen, but for some reason, he was able to match the pace of the guys around him. So, mega job once again from Verstappen. I don't agree with him being driver of the day. We might talk about that a little bit later on, but still, the fact he was able to do that, I was just not expecting on that restart.
Yeah, says a lot about Honda as well. They seem to have really got the power unit right this year, which will surprise a few. A lot of people thought they were going to struggle this year, but they've done a cracking job. That's such a British line, isn't it? They've done a cracking job. They have, love. Fantastic. Oh dear. From Red Bull today. Disappointed for Gasly, I think, down in 6th, but at the same time, kind of what Red Bull need him to do, isn't it? Just to round out that top 6 and bring home the points. So I can't really say too much on Gasly. But let's talk about Ferrari before we talk about the midfield. I know you're probably chomping at the bit to talk about Romain Grosjean, Dan, but we'll talk about Ferrari. First corner, first lap, Sebastian Vettel. I've seen a few people saying he was wrong to go for that in turn 1 and should have been a bit calmer with that lock-up. It was the right thing to do. He knew. He didn't look confident before the race. Binotto wasn't confident. He knew Mercedes were going to disappear if he didn't get in the mix. So he went for it, and actually before the braking zone was marginally leading the race, and then of course the big lock-up, and that compromised his Grand Prix, but I don't think he'd have kept with Mercedes even if he'd sat behind him in 3rd place. So right to make that move at the time. Obviously strategy, it compromised him, but he's got to go for it in that situation, hasn't he?
Yeah, I fully agree. He had to do it, and like he was so close as well. And even if he had just only got in front of one of the Mercedes, at least that would have given the team a little bit more of a strategic option, perhaps with Leclerc behind, trying to do an undercut on Bottas and try and at least single out one of the Mercedes. Yes, I agree with you that I think the Mercedes were a class above this weekend and would have got past, but it was super close. And Bottas, a little bit surprised he came off the brakes a little bit too early, but if he hadn't, that would have really set up the race. On the replays several times, I was thinking, blimey, if he'd have just gone a little bit more deeper, we could have seen a 2016 all over again. So I think Vettel did the right thing. And like you say, even though it kind of screwed over his strategy and he did end up losing out on that podium place to Verstappen, at this point, when Mercedes are doing so well, they've got to be trying things like that at least.
They've got to go for it. They've got to start taking gambles and risks, and that's what he went for, and it didn't pay off. But the replays on board with Bottas, wow, was that close. If he kept his foot, he'd have had the choice, hit Vettel or hit my teammate. That would have been his option in that situation. He was just absolutely squeezed right in there. Did well to hold the car, actually, because he got quite a snap after that, didn't he, on the back end, so did quite well to hang on to that. But strategy that obviously compromised Vettel. He's got the flat spot. He's struggling. He's on the radio pretty constantly, actually, saying, I want to get off these tyres. What can we do? The problem for me with Ferrari's strategy today is first of all, they waited too long to swap Leclerc and Vettel the first time. They should have let Leclerc through pretty much straight away when they saw Vettel was struggling on those tyres, rather than leaving him to fight for a few laps. And then later on in the race, they should have done the opposite. They should have swapped them back over again even quicker. They should have let Vettel pass Leclerc. They didn't know there was going to be a safety car. At that point, it didn't look like we were going to see a safety car. Nobody was anywhere near anybody else. So I don't understand why when Vettel comes out, fresher tyres, he's definitely two-stopping. Leclerc's on the hard tyres, he's definitely one-stopping. Why are they letting them squabble and not just saying to Charles, look, mate, get out of the way. We've got to do this for strategy. It's our only hope of getting Verstappen. And I think that's ultimately what cost them 3rd place today. Nothing against Verstappen. I think he was brilliant, as we've already said. But I just think that if they'd have swapped those Ferraris over first time quicker and second time quicker, they'd have got Verstappen, like I say, 1.4 off in the end from a podium.
Yeah. And what's so strange is that they take 4 or 5 laps. It's not one lap or one straight. It's 4 or 5 laps for a decision to come to fruition, which is just so strange. You look at every other team on the grid, and very quickly, before the drivers even caught up behind their teammate, they let them know, "Can you please move out the way?" Ferrari seem to wait till they're almost hitting each other to make the decision, which, like I say, it's just so strange. And it almost, I don't believe this is the case, but it almost feels like they're making up the strategy on the fly almost, which, look, don't get me wrong, they need to be able to adapt their strategies, but they just seem so slow to do it. Whether that's because they're trying to be a little bit conservative because they need as many points as possible, I'm not really too sure, but it did cost them a hell of a lot of time today, and it's the second time it's clearly happened this season. It happened in China, a little bit of a different circumstance because when Vettel did get by, he wasn't able to get moving forward, and it was almost a bit of a stalemate. But still, it's just, I don't want to call it amateurish mistakes, but they just have to be more snappy and they have to be more ruthless in these decisions.
Do you know, that's an interesting point. That is a very interesting point. They're too slow to react. I wonder if they. Oh, this is a conversation for another stream or another video. But I wonder if they regret taking Leclerc this year. Nothing. I think it was the right call, but I think they've got themselves a problem. Kimi Raikkonen, with all due respect, without making him sound like he was a yes man, would have been out of the way quickly. He'd have played the team game. Leclerc's got a point to prove, and this year Ferrari haven't got the car. Quite frankly, at the moment, we don't know what's going to happen, but at the moment, challenge Mercedes. And the problem they've got now is they've potentially got a bit of an infight between Vettel and Leclerc, a guy who was probably expecting Leclerc to turn up, do as he was told, and take a while to get up to speed, and Leclerc who's like, hey, I want to make a point. I'm trying to prove my point. So I think they've got a real headache there. But strategy, it is Ferrari's weak point, and it has been for a long time, and they've got to do something about it. I do wonder, again, probably a conversation for another day, but I do wonder if that change in management in the winter was too late. To do that a few weeks before testing. I know people were saying, oh, maybe they made the call before Christmas. Maybe they did, but even then, you're leaving it very late in that car's development. It's already pretty much done. What can Binotto do at that point? I know he was already part of the team, but I think to make that call before preseason, that close to preseason testing, it's a bit of instability, isn't it? And that could be crucial. Like you said on Arriva Bene, would he have been a bit harder with this? Would he have just gone, no, Charles, get out of the way, do as you're told?
Yeah. And no one's replaced Binotto, has he? He's just got more.
He's got more jobs
role within the team. Yeah, so that doesn't help either. So whether they are planning on changing that for next season, I don't know. But yeah, changing it just before winter testing is not ideal. And again, behind closed doors, you've got no idea. You've got no idea whether it was Arriva Bene's decision to move Raikkonen on. You just don't know. But it's little things like that which all add up and cause these issues just 5 races into the season, which is one of Mercedes' strong points, is that they're very straightforward. They don't make giant changes and they just get the job done. They're consistent. And Ferrari, like I say, it's been a weakness for a few years now, strategy with Ferrari, but it's little things that just add up, which are really hurting them at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on from this. I could talk about Ferrari all afternoon because there's just so many things that intrigue me about what's going on there, and I can't get my head around it. For a team, they're not a new team. These are the sort of things you'd expect Haas to be making, these mistakes in strategy, but Haas don't seem to be doing that, and Ferrari are, and it's bizarre. And I don't know, maybe pressure maybe gets them, but we'll move on from Ferrari, and we're going to talk about the midfield because it got really tasty towards the end, Dan. Do you know what, actually? Stuff it. I'm going to sit back a minute. Dan, Romain Grosjean.
How long? How long do you want to rest for, mate?
Well, I want to try and finish for 6, so you've got 35 minutes.
Disappointed is how I'm coming away from this race. I really am. He was, considering what happened last year in Spain for Grosjean, even though the car was looking good, I was expecting him to be behind Magnussen, maybe at the lower end of the points. But when all weekend in practice he was 5th in most sessions, I'm thinking, oh wow, they could really challenge Red Bull. Now that didn't happen. However, in qualifying, 7th, just ahead of Magnussen. But in the race, Grosjean was comfortably the best of the rest. So there's me, I'm buzzing. I'm getting hyped for some first points for the season for Grosjean. Safety car comes out. And then it happens. You know, he wasn't the best at the restart. Magnussen dives it up the inside, leaves him very little room. It's similar to the incident between Norris and Stroll. Contact. I start rolling on the floor dying, thinking that, you know, there's going to be a DNF, no points once again. And then almost every single lap, I don't know how much damage was on the car for Grosjean, but he was just a sitting duck. I was having a heart attack watching the TV, screaming. No one else was because, you know, not many people support
It's
Grosjean.
Grosjean.
Yeah, exactly. But those last 15 laps, it was... I could go on forever, so I don't really want to, but I was a bit peed off with K-Mag. You know, we know how ruthless he is, and that's fine. You know, no issue with that. But I just personally feel a team like Haas, especially this season, when already they've seen if a circuit is cold, they're going to struggle. So they need as many points as they can get. This weekend was perfect for them, pinch perfect. And yet a silly little incident like that, yes, Grosjean could have come off a little bit, but there's no, in my personal view, which is biased, I'm happy to say that, Magnussen just could have given him a little bit more room. They could have had a hell of a lot more points, which would have helped them so much in the constructors. So watching Grosjean go back was very upsetting. Chuffed he did get a point, and I think that will help him for the rest of the season, because 5 races, no points is a little bit worrying. But I did come away thinking Magnussen, that is... I personally felt it looked bad on Magnussen more than it did Grosjean. But maybe I'm in the minority there.
I was joking about 35 minutes, you know.
Well, you shouldn't tempt me like that.
I'll be honest, when I was watching the race watch or doing the race watch along, I grimaced when they went into turn 1. I was like, oh, this is not going to go well. I mean, Magnussen was aggressive, but I think... See, if he does that against a Sainz, for example, you're probably going, yeah, he's aggressive, but it's fair. Against your teammate, you're sort of going, yeah, it could have actually cost your team massively there. You really could. But I don't think there was an awful lot in that. I know you're going to be biased about it because you're a Grosjean fan, I know. But I think Magnussen was within his rights to close the door. Luckily, there's runoff down there now and not gravel. Otherwise, probably game over for Grosjean. It might have been different with the stewards. But I did wonder if there was damage to Grosjean's car because he did drop off really quickly, and I think he did really well in the end to get that point, because I thought Albon, the way he was dropping off, not so much on pace, but the way he was losing time, I did think Albon was going to get past him. And I did wonder if Ricciardo might get him as well. So he's done very well to hang on to that point. Huge point for Roman as well, because we talked about this in the podcast last week, didn't we? He's not had a great start to the season. Not his fault in most cases. In fact, possibly in all cases. But really frustrating start to the season for him. No points on the board, so massive point for him. And it's come 2 or 3, 4 rounds earlier than it did last year. So hopefully this will sort of kickstart his season. But I think K-Mag was brilliant. Haas were fantastic all weekend. I'm going to have to say that. I really gutted they couldn't take the fight to Red Bull and Ferrari in qualifying, although he wasn't a million miles away from Gasly. And actually, Magnussen almost got Gasly on the safety car restart as well, didn't he? After what was going on with them all squabbling as Gasly tried to pass Leclerc. Magnussen went for it in turn 4. They were side by side for a couple of corners. I think through 3, 4, and then Gasly held on through 5. So that was cracking to watch. I hate saying cracking. That was wonderful to watch. Amazing to watch. Very enjoyable after 61 laps of nothing, pretty much. So yeah, Haas could have had even more today, but I wonder if Gunther Steiner might pull them together, just sort of get them in a room afterwards and go, right, Roman would have been 8th today. What the hell are you doing, Kevin? But I don't want to put the blame at his door, but I think words might be had.
Yeah. And I think if anyone's seen the Netflix documentary series, Steiner's definitely the type of guy who will be doing that, and that will not surprise me. But no, it really, the whole safety car and everything that came afterwards, although it was painful for me, I think that really did add a bit of flavour to the race, because it was quite stale at that point. And I know it was Grosjean going backwards, but he was trying to give people a good run for their money. Sainz and Grosjean had a bit of wheel banging as well, which, again, was very upsetting for me. But it is what the race needed, and it is what Grosjean needed, just getting that 1 point. And Albon, that's 2 11th places in a row now. But I feel he's at the stage of his career where points aren't mega for him. He just needs to perform, especially in that Toro Rosso. And actually, Toro Rosso, like Haas as well, they had a really strong weekend. So that midfield super, super close. And yes, I think words will be definitely had at Haas.
I love that I can hear it in your voice as well. You're trying to stay positive, but I can just hear that little niggle of, I'm going to find K-Mag's address, I'm going to pay him a visit, and I'm going to have words.
Yeah.
Just deep breaths, mate. It's fine. Actually, do you know, I was going to talk about Sainz next, but you mentioned Toro Rosso, so we may as well. Daniel Kvyat gave us some action today. What a move. I know he was on fresher tyres, and people are going to jump on me for this and be like, he was on fresher tyres, and that's why he was able to do it. Kermit the Frog apparently turning up there for the stream live. But what a move around the outside of Kimi Raikkonen in turn 4. I don't see many moves around there. Cracking. I keep saying cracking, but it was a great overtake on Raikkonen, and then of course managed to get the move done on Roman as well. Did he overtake anybody? He just seemed to do all the overtaking today. We didn't get a lot of it, and it seemed to be that Kvyat did most of what we did get. So really good drive. And I said in the watch along, a driver that I was so peed off about the way Red Bull treated him, and I don't think he should have been dropped from Toro Rosso, but that year off has done him the world of good, because you look at the incident in China, he's got his part of the blame for that, but he's driven so well this season. This weekend, brilliant in qualifying, fantastic in the race, gave us overtaking, 2 more points on the board for Toro Rosso as well. I think they've been one of the surprises so far this season. It is only 6 points, but still, I don't know how to. I'm just impressed with Kvyat, okay? I'm just impressed with Kvyat.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And Toro Rosso as well. They've scored in every single race except last time out in Azerbaijan, I believe. And I hope I'm not making that up, but I'm pretty confident, which is a huge surprise considering we thought Alfa Romeo would be there. Renault, where on earth are they at the moment? They're a massive surprise in the opposite direction. But Kvyat, just going back to him there, when he got dropped from Red Bull, even that season afterwards when he was at Toro Rosso, he was nowhere, making silly little mistakes, not really putting in any impressive performances whatsoever. This season, even though Albon seems like he's on absolute fire, so is Kvyat. And I think both of them seem to be bouncing off each other really well, pushing each other every single weekend. They're always both super close in qualifying. And it's nice to see for a team which usually people expect, because they're a B team, to be further down the grid. But this season, they're doing a really solid job in that midfield. And Kvyat reinvigorated. And don't get me wrong, a lot of people talking about him going back to Red Bull if Gasly doesn't perform. I don't think that's going to happen at all.
No.
But it's nice to see that people are appreciating his talent, and it's nice to see that he's actually doing a good enough job for people to be considering that at all.
If Gasly continues to finish in 6th place in every Grand Prix between now and the end of the year, I think he'll keep his seat because he's doing what Red Bull need him to do. If Max Verstappen starts winning every race between now and the end of the year and Gasly's still 6th, then no, he'll get dropped because he should be up in 2nd place. But yeah, no, I think he's doing all he needs to do. I've been impressed with Toro Rosso. Another man I'm impressed with, Carlos Sainz, not just this weekend, but in Spain in general. Points paying position, 8th place from 12th on the grid. Here's a stat for you, Dan. I believe, and I'm hoping I'm not wrong on this, but I think he's now scored at every single Spanish Grand Prix he's started in Formula 1. So that's not a bad stat at all. He did well to get through to 12th. Strategy worked well for McLaren. Some overtaking in there as well. I seem to recall seeing him do some overtaking. So seems to have got the looks going his way. He was strong. He was solid at the start of the season anyway. I know we're still more or less at the start of the season, but you know what I mean. And it was just the look that didn't really go his way. So really happy for Sainz in 8th. Disappointed for Norris, obviously. We've already talked about that incident. But McLaren, still 4th in the Constructors. Not many were predicting that in the winter, Dan. I think Sainz was solid today.
Yeah, and they were a little bit disappointed after quali. Sainz made that mistake on his final run, so maybe he could have got into Q3, but holding back Ricciardo almost the entire race, that was, although there wasn't much proper scrapping going on, side-by-side action sort of thing, but the fact he was able to hold off Ricciardo for so many laps and then get back past him, and then got the safety car restart, do a nice couple of overtakes there, it was a really impressive performance by Sainz. I think it's the kind of drive which McLaren need at the moment. I don't think they're hurting from the loss of Alonso, but I think they need that team leader. Question marks in the winter whether Sainz would be able to step up, but I think he's done a really good job. And this is the sort of race where things at the start of the weekend aren't quite going your way. He was able to turn it around and picking up points on a day where, again, perhaps McLaren shouldn't have, looking at their qualifying pace. That's exactly what he needs to be doing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm impressed with Sainz. Felt like he gave him a bit too much stick in the winter, and then realised that actually he was the best point scorer, not in terms of the numbers he scored, but he scored in more races last year than anybody else in that midfield. So great start for him, and I hope Norris can keep going. He's had a good start as well. McLaren in general looked really strong, but Renault, I mean, what do you say? 12th and 13th, good recovery from Hulkenberg to get to 13th from the pit lane, so he's done well on a track he can't ever take on. One-stop strategy, so that's helped him out massively there, of course, because he's pitted one fewer times than everybody else. Daniel Ricciardo, 12th from 13th. This is a team that many were saying, and I've said this a million times, were going to be taking on Red Bull for third, and they are 8th in the Constructors, 12 points from 5 races, and they look a long way off best of the rest. A very long way off best of the rest. Out in Q1 again for Hulkenberg. Ricciardo only just by a few hundredths scraped through Q1. It's just not good enough for a team that have progressed and improved year on year and have put so much money in. And then you come to Spain where you would think, well, if they were okay in pre-season testing, they look good. They've developed the car, they've bought updates, and even with updates, they've just not really done anything. I'm disappointed, frustrating, and actually quite angry about the situation at Renault when you consider there are teams that are spending less than them and have spent less than them that are currently beating them quite comfortably.
Yeah, and what makes the situation even worse is that, as you mentioned there, in the winter, everything seemed quite chipper about the team. Ricciardo seemed happy. He needed that fresh bit of scenery, as he kept on saying all winter. But already, even he looks like he's regretting the decision. And he's made mistakes this year. Hulkenberg's made mistakes this year. However, not major mistakes. And yet they're still nowhere. And I don't think anyone's going to argue that they've got a bad driver lineup. I particularly think it's one of the stronger ones on the grid. So it's just baffling for everyone at the team, because it doesn't seem like they're going to be going forward anytime soon. They don't seem to really know what the major issues with the car is, which is a bit worrying. And each weekend, the midfield has been flipping all over the place. As in, one weekend, Renault might look good, Haas might look good, the next they're nowhere. But Renault consistently, at the moment, seems to be at that lower end almost every weekend. So another team that really need to get it together and quick, because we saw with Haas last year, those mistakes in Melbourne cost them at the end of the year. And already we've seen so many races Renault get it wrong. Bahrain, those 2 failures at the end, that could really hurt them at the end of the season. And this is a big season for them, because I was one of those people. I'll put my hand up. I was.
That's why I said it.
I know. I did think they were going to have a strong year. So they will be bitterly disappointed. And considering they did come out of the electric formula to focus on Formula One when they were so dominant in that series, that it's just such a surprise. It really is, and they need to do better.
I love that you call it the electric formula.
Don't want to get people triggered.
No, yes. I think somebody said it in chat. I think heads are going to roll. Helium Trophy says, I think Cyril's job is on the line. They're running out. After Australia, fine, it's 1 race. Bahrain, fine, it's 2 races. They were good until their retirement with the mechanical issues. 3 races. How many times are we going to go, we're only 20 races into the season. Renault can still pull this back. It's not good enough, and I think heads are going to roll there. But again, that's a story for another day. Quick word on our remaining teams. Alpha Racing Points. We'll talk about the others in a minute, but Alfa and Racing Points, not really a good weekend for Alfa Romeo. Kimi Raikkonen didn't have the pace. Giovinazzi didn't have the pace, got a gearbox penalty as well. I did wonder if Kimi might be able to go through to the points, keep his run going, but it's not happened. Disappointing, because they were one that looked pretty good in Barcelona, certainly in the first week of pre-season testing. And Racing Points, they were best of the rest in Baku, in my opinion, and not just because of Perez's position. I just think they had the speed there. But they've turned up in Spain. They were fairly optimistic, and they've just not delivered. Again, the pace just wasn't there. So really disappointing with the performances from Alfa and Racing Point this year, this race. But I think both of them are going to have strong years, and there are going to be tracks like this where they're going to struggle, and then they're going to turn up at a Monaco or a Canada and then just end up being best of the rest or something. So I don't think they're going to struggle this season, but I'm disappointed to see them so far down the the timesheets on the result. But Williams, they were there again. They turned up. They arrived on time in Barcelona. Absolutely. George Russell, again, beating Robert Kubica 7.2 seconds up the road. I mean, anything to say on those? There's not really anything we can say on Williams, but anything to say on Alpha and Racing Point, Dan?
No, as you mentioned, it was a shame for Kimi losing that sort of ending that streak. I was impressed with Russell, how close he was in qualifying. That was, I suppose, some slight smiles for Williams. But yeah, I mean, we're only ever seeing them when they're getting lapped. So it's difficult considering all of those three teams, I believe, bought upgrades this weekend. But yeah, a race to forget for those three.
Yeah. Driver of the day then. I'm sure chat are going to let me know. Drop a surname in for who you think is driver of the day. I'll read some from Twitter as well. I'm going to do that first, actually. So Jack, the self-proclaimed chief moderator, says Kvyat was his driver of the day, although it was nice to see the Honey Badger's new helmet actually finish a race. Josh, afternoon Josh, says Kvyat, never expected to say that. No. Danny says Kvyat as well. Some idiot from F1/E reviews, don't know who he is, says not Magnussen.
I agree with that one.
Our John T, the Brummy as you call him, Kvyat. Let's scroll down a little bit further. Annette, surprisingly, I think Max, I'm liking this new Max. Kvyat was good too. Robert says DK26. I had to think about it, like DK26 sounds like an aftershave, but obviously that's Daniel Kvyat. A lot of love for Kvyat. Wow. Lando for making the last 10 laps more exciting in the midfield. That's a good shout from, is that Krasatav? Apologies, butchering names. Kvyat again. Hulkenberg went up to 13th, says Ryan. I don't think he's driver of the day, but I'd like to say good recovery to get up there. Strategy obviously helping him there. Sainz 12th to 8th is a great result, says a Simbom. A couple more. Anna says Norris for spicing things up. A couple have said that. And I'm going to take one more. LKAOI says Kvyat or Sainz. I'll take some from the chat in a moment. Dan, driver of the day, mate. Verstappen got the official one. You said earlier you don't agree. I'd be interested to know why. More because the comments will be fun. But also, who was your driver of the day, mate?
I think I'd go with Sainz. As we just said earlier, that was a really mature drive from Sainz. And again, it wasn't super flashy, like Kvyat's move around the outside. That was mega. But for me, this is the sort of drives that midfield fight you need to be seeing. And from 12th up to 8th is a mega job, in my opinion. But Kvyat, close second, but Sainz for me.
Yeah, he had a good performance. I think Sainz is a good shout, but I would put Kvyat and Verstappen above him. Maybe controversial. I don't know. I'm looking at chat. They don't seem to be keen on the idea of Sainz, some of them. I think it's fair to say. I think we've got to mention Lewis Hamilton. I always do this. We have to mention the race winner because he got out front, controlled the race, got the better start over his teammate, which is about what he needs to do, and vice versa in that situation, knocking out the front row. Drove well, controlled it, managed the pace. Really solid drive. But again, as I've said this about him in the past and other drivers as well, it's what you kind of expect from him. So I'm so torn between Verstappen and Kvyat. I don't know.
Well, that's not good.
Get off a fence, Sean. I'll do it, Dip. I'll go Verstappen. No, we got the official one. I'm going to go Kvyat. Stuff it. I'm going to go Kvyat because Verstappen got the official one. I'm not doing the same as the official one. It's not right. That was... Yeah. I think Verstappen drove really well. Kvyat, though, he gave us the action, didn't he? So yeah, that's where I'm kind of torn a little bit here. But quick few from chats before we try and sum this up and take a couple of questions before rounding off. James says Kvyat. I'll tell you what, I'm going to look for a lot of saying Kvyat. So Ryan... Thea, wasn't me, Ned, Flying Tiger, all saying Kvyat. Oliver says Max for sure. A lot saying Kvyat. Verstappen, Bottas, Kvyat driver of the day. Sainz or Kvyat for Milton. WM Rhyme says Sainz, or Ryan says Sainz. Verstappen, Sainz. It's obviously Carlos Sainz because Cavalier. Obviously Carlos Sainz. I like that. K-Mag. I don't think you'll like that one, Dan. Hulkenberg from Welsh Toast. Interested by the the Hulkenberg ones. Lewis dominated that one. He did indeed, Aaron. Definitely deserves a shout because he controlled it and dominated. I completely agree. Charles Leclerc says Bandai Namco. Not for me today. Not for me today. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, of course. That's what this channel's about. People can... it's a bit of a fanny channel. Fanny channel. Oh, dear. Jesus, Sean. Oh, Christ. It's a fan channel. I'm doomed. So I'm quite happy to take opinions on that one. Russell says Alistair. Grosjean says Daniel Philpott, obviously. And one more. Logan Butcher says Lewis Hamilton. So, yeah, some good shouts in there. Sum it up then, Dan, from your point of view, before I do my 25-minute moan about it. What are you rating that Spanish Grand Prix out of 10, and where does F1 go from here for 2019?
I enjoyed that one. You know, it wasn't Bahrain levels, but it wasn't China levels. It was a middle of the road kind of race, I'm feeling. I personally did enjoy the strategy and trying to figure out what on earth Ferrari was doing. I found that fairly entertaining, and Lando Norris, the saviour we all needed today. That safety car, that did save the race. But out of 10, I want to say a 6 or a 7. I think 7's potentially pushing it a little bit, so I'll say a 6. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to forget this race in a hurry. Those last 15 laps, trauma for any Grosjean fan out there. So yeah, it's okay. And for the rest of the season, as we said at the start, it's looking like Mercedes have got this one on lockdown. And that's a hell of a statement so early on, but they really are looking that good.
For me, I think first 61 laps, probably a 5. But last 15, I think you could push to a 6 or a 7. Very middle of the road up to that point. Like I say, if you enjoy your strategy and stuff, there was plenty to keep you entertained. But in terms of wheel-to-wheel racing, there wasn't that much. But it wasn't the worst Spanish Grand Prix I've ever seen. It wasn't the best race I've ever seen, don't get me wrong, but it was not the worst Spanish Grand Prix. And the trouble is with Spain, it's a little bit like Australia. You're kind of expecting a certain type of Grand Prix. So when it then delivers the Grand Prix you're expecting, it's very hard to say that it was rubbish because you expected it to be rubbish, or you expected it to be. Do you know what I mean? So I came into this weekend going, I'm not looking forward to this. I think it's going to be Mercedes domination, and I don't think it's going to be a thrilling race. And then 61 laps are pretty average. You get a good final 15 laps. Mercedes dominate everything I thought was going to happen apart from the safety car. So it's hard to really go, wow, it's amazing. But it was all right. It was 5 out of 10 what I expected from Spain. So lot of work to do for Ferrari. I think Red Bull are knocking on the door of being second quickest. I don't know how much of that is the car though, Dan, and how much is Verstappen. I'm not going to sit here and tongue his backside. But yeah, I think it's got to be the car as well as the driver. It's Formula One now. Sergio Perez has some great stuff, some very interesting stuff before the weekend about how Formula One's become a team's championship and not a driver's championship, and the car is what is the deciding factor. So I think the car has a huge say in it, but Verstappen's doing very well in that car. So I think Red Bull, they're going to give Ferrari some concern. But in terms of the drivers' championship, at the moment, I don't see Ferrari coming back into this. I think this is Hamilton versus Bottas. And I think Mercedes have got the constructors, but Red Bull could yet make this interesting. That's kind of how I see the season from here on in. But long old way to go, Dan. It's a 21 race season.
It is indeed. And you look at the season last year, and especially Verstappen, how he had that incredible run of form in the second half of the season. He was nowhere. He had that awful run of luck in the first half, and then all of a sudden, almost third in the championship. So it is all still to play for. And all it needs is just one upgrade from Ferrari to go their way, and everything changes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take a couple of questions from chat. I'm going to try not to overrun today. I've been talking all afternoon, so I'm losing my voice. I'm not moaning. Well,
no, of course not.
DRS wasn't as powerful as I expected compared to last year, says Runners 12 Racing. That's a good point, actually. The field wasn't that bunched up to see an awful lot of it, but yeah, it's a fair point. It was fairly powerful, but not as much as I expected, with it being the long straight and the extra DRS. Did Racing Point upgrade fail, says Comedyist? Too early to tell. Racing Point, historically their season tends to get going Spain onwards. They weren't great, but they've had a good start to the season, so I think Spain and Monaco are difficult to call. Generally, Spain will expose a bad car. But I don't think Racing Points is a bad car, so that kind of completely negates what I just said. So ignore every word. that I just said to answer that question. Too early to tell. I think Canada's going to be a good shout. I think by Canada, we're going to know roughly what the pecking order is in that midfield for now. Then, of course, you've got upgrades after the summer break. So we'll see. Thoughts on the Toro Rosso double pit stop fiasco, says Science Guy. Good point. I forgot to mention that. A bit of a mess up. Was it Kvyat first into the pits? A bit of a mess up in that one, and then they didn't have the tyres ready, and then obviously that held up Albon in the end as well. A bit sloppy, but when you're trying to react to a safety car, it's a split-second thing, isn't it, in many ways? So I'd imagine it'll be a case of Franz Tost gets hold of the pit crew and goes, "What were you doing?" And then has a word and gets it sorted for Monaco. But yeah, it's sloppy stuff, but ultimately, well, probably cost Albon a point.
Yeah, and probably hurt Kvyat against Sainz as well. So, maybe that changes who I think's driver of the day, considering he was still able to hold in there. Anyway, yes, that did hurt them today. But you're right. I mean, in those sort of situations, it is pretty chaos in the pit lane, but not ideal from Toro Rosso.
Elian wants to know the opinion on tyre strategy for Max. I think it made sense. He had the fresh set of softs. If I'd have been in Red Bull's position, and obviously this is with the benefit of hindsight, they weren't to know a safety car was coming, but if I was in Red Bull's position, I'd have put the mediums on at the first stop and kept the softs back, and then he could have had a charge towards the end at those Mercedes. Obviously, he doesn't know the safety car's going to come out, but I think I'd have gone medium soft rather than soft to medium. But I think it's the right strategy to use those extra softs. Otherwise, there's no point keeping them, to be honest. So I think that was an all right strategy. I don't think there was anything major. Well, unless you disagree, Dan, do you think it was a daft strategy, or do you think it was spot on? Or
I thought it was all right. At the time, I thought, what are they doing? But they seemed to be the only team that were plan A was to be the two-stop. I think the other teams were trying to edge their bets and do a one-stop, and very quickly that seemed to change halfway through the race. So at the time, I thought it was a little bit strange, but overall it was fine. I don't think they would have gained or lost anything if they tried anything different, and I think they definitely maximised what they could have got this weekend.
Steve says, did you guys think it was weird they pitted Bottas before Lewis when Lewis was the one who ruined his tyres? Bottas was a lot faster, would have changed the order with the safety car. I held back on saying it during the race, but I felt like they realised at that point they had to bring Hamilton in because that rear tyre needed to be changed. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think what happened was the team probably thought, let's bring Bottas in first. Let's not let Lewis lose the lead. We don't want him getting... Because if you look at it exactly, under the safety car, it would have swapped positions. Then what do Mercedes do? So I think maybe with the possibility of a safety car in mind, they thought about it in that respect. But I think they were just trying to think, right, let's just bring Bottas in, change Valtteri's tyres, then bring Lewis in. And then at least we're not going to get an unhappy Lewis over team radio or questions over why we're doing this and why we're doing that. So I think it made sense. It made sense. He was also told, though, Bottas, not to push the fastest lap at the end. So I think maybe even taking that into account, perhaps Mercedes had already pulled rank and decided, let's get the 1-2 sorted and bring these two home. Maybe.
Yeah, I agree mostly. I did think it was a little odd at first because we didn't see Bottas's tyres, but I mean, yeah, I think they were just trying to... they had such a gap. They were so far in front. They didn't need to do anything silly, so I think that was probably more their thinking.
Yeah, Bottas, by the way, said he has a clutch issue, a strange clutch issue off the line. There'll be more on that in the debrief tomorrow, proper debrief. This is just us chatting about the race. Couple more questions. I did see one I wanted to answer earlier, and I can't find who it was, so I might not be able to give you a shout out. So apologies. But somebody did ask about a surprise podium in Monaco. Who it could be. It all depends what kind of Monaco. I keep saying this, I've been watching Monaco 97, and that was chaos. Absolute chaos. So depends if you're going to get a standard Monaco where you get a bit of procession. I don't think we will see a shock podium. If we get a bit of action, a bit of drama, maybe a few retirements, might see a McLaren nick one if they've got their chassis right, or even Toro Rosso. Who knows? The way they've been performing lately, they might surprise, but it's difficult with the way Formula 1 is at the moment because shock podiums aren't all that regular.
No. Gasly? Would that be a shock podium
in Monaco. See, if Red Bull turn up and do what I'm expecting them to do, it will be a shock if Gasly isn't on the podium.
True.
But then he's had he's had a tricky start to the season, hasn't he? So maybe it would be a shock for a lot of people if he got on the podium. But I mean, of course, I'm only basing this off what we've seen in the past. Red Bull have had chassis issues this year, so I'm only basing this off what we've seen in Monaco in the past. It's very much a Red Bull track. I suppose Gasly's a shout, given how he started the season.
I'm not expecting fireworks.
No.
At Monaco, I think that's more what it is. But I think you're right. If there was, I think you'd expect McLaren and Toro Rosso, maybe Alfa Romeo. They seem to have a strong strategy. Maybe Kimi Räikkönen, but again, you're expecting absolute carnage, which would be great. In my predictions, we did. I said Monaco would see the most safety cars, so hopefully. Yeah. But it's looking at the last couple of years, people seem to be being a little bit more cautious around Monaco. So I think if anyone, it would be Gasly, if you want to say he's a bit of a wild card.
What keeps people watching Monaco is the threat of a crash, isn't it? The field can be spread. You could have 5 seconds between every driver on the grid. There could still be a crash, and that's what keeps people watching. So that could make it interesting. But a couple of super chats to read before I disappear. Suffering Addict, thank you very much for your contribution. Said this stream is better than the race was. Thank you, I think. I think. Yeah, thank you for that. And Lord Pidder, thank you very much for all of your contributions today, actually. Massively appreciated. Said Burnt Mylander, only not Mercedes leading driver of the day. The safety car's a Mercedes, mate. So technically we had a third Mercedes leading. I think the safety car's still a Mercedes. I might be wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
So Burnt Mylander got some laps in today. But thank you very much, Dan. We're going to leave it there, mate, because... I can only say it was all right, and we had some strategy intrigue so many times before I run out of things to say. But it's been a pleasure chatting to you as always, mate. Hopefully a bit of drama in Monaco we could do with it. I know drama doesn't make a race. It's more than that. We need close racing and whatnot, but I feel like we could do with a bit of excitement now.
Yeah, that would be nice. Spice up the season a little bit. Maybe it would be nice to see a different winner. That would be great, but no. It was a fine race this weekend, and thanks for having me, mate.
No worries at all, mate. I'm sure I'll talk to you shortly, and thank you again.
Thanks, man. See you later.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Dan. And of course, thank you to you guys for tuning in, not just for this one, but if you tune in for the watch along as well. Brilliant stuff. Massively appreciated all your support over this weekend. May's a bit slow on YouTube. I'm going to keep powering through. I'm going to be back tomorrow with the debrief. That's a proper look back, some reaction from the drivers and whatnot if you're new to the channel, and a quick run through the whole field and get some reaction from every driver, pretty much. Other than that, I will let you know what's happening next week because I've not got a schedule ready for that, and I don't plan to do it. I'm just going to pop stuff up when I feel like it next week, non-race week. Don't forget you can follow me on social media for all of my random, way too many tweeting moments. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.